Hey, guys. My name is LaShonn, but you can call me the Change Navigator. That's why you clicked on the podcast because of the name, right? All right, cool. I want to begin by saying welcome to my new listeners and welcome back to the Faithful Navigators. We took off a couple of weeks during the month of March, but March is still Women's History Month. And this is season 3 of the podcast, and we are focusing on the pivot. And if you know what pivot simply means to reposition or to turn. And let me throw in this shameless plug real quick. I recently released an ebook. It's called Pivot: 8 Keys to Reinventing Your Now. It is available on Amazon Kindle. So go to Amazon Kindle, type in that title or type in my name, LaShonn, and the ebook will pop up. I promise you there are so many great things, keys you can use in that book. Well, today we have a very, very special guest with us today. I'm so excited about Dr. Tameka LaShonn joining us today. Let me give you a little bit about her, a little bit of information about her, and then I'll let her tell you guys about herself. So Dr. LaShonn will always honor Baltimore as her home base, but she hails from a little bit of everywhere due to being raised in a military family. And so she says, after a fairly flawless childhood, her world was devastated by heartbreak and divorce. And so she moved with compassion for those battling with depression. And in turn, she earned a master's in counseling and a doctorate in psychology in order to provide professional help. She began journaling simply just to get her thoughts out and whenever life happened. So those thoughts became her blog. And the name of her blog is Something Blue to Something New, another vehicle through which she is able to help people navigate. Y'all hear that word? Navigate their path to rediscovery. Dr. Tameka currently works and resides in Texas as a mental health professional. All right. And so while she loves encouraging others toward personal growth and wellness, she says that her greatest joy is being the mother of 3 incredible teenagers. And she is eager for the day when they can drive themselves to all of their extracurricular activities. If any of you listening are parents of teenagers and your teenagers are involved in extracurricular activities, you know exactly what she's talking about. So, guys, I just want to introduce to you all Dr. Tameka LaShonn.
Hey, everybody. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here. This is incredible.
Yes, I'm excited to get this conversation rolling. Guys, listen, Dr. LaShonn, Tameka LaShonn, is a wealth of information, and she always has revelation from the simplest things. The simplest things, she can get revelation. She will pull something from the simplest things that she may see, and you'll be like, wow, like, how did she get that from that? But I love it, and I love people who think like that and people who see the world through that lens. And so we are going to again have this wonderful conversation with her. And Dr. Tameka, let the navigators know a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think you said it all so beautifully. I'm pretty simple if you ask me. I think my life has been one to where I've had to figure out how to get to the next step. So a lot of people have everything organized and planned. I did as well. And I think what makes me an asset for the career path that I chose is because I've been able just to figure out how to pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. I'm the baby. So the first time I ever had any opportunity to deal with children was when I became a mother and then ended up becoming a teacher. So it's not like I was everybody's auntie growing up. It's not like I was big sister growing up, nor, I was in a military family. So it's not like I grew up with a whole bunch of younger people to where, I was impactful in that area. So all of my life is trial and error, lots of error.
Uh-huh.
But figuring it out and just realizing that that's kind of the beauty of the story. You get an opportunity to figure it out. So
I,
here now, I'm in Texas. Hook 'em horns. I went to UT, got married right after I graduated from college, and that's how I ended up in this region. And I've been here ever since because the cost of living, as much as I love my Ravens, I also love my land, right?
uh-huh.
So you can just expand a little bit differently here in Texas. And so here I am. I'm good.
I love it. I love it. You said trial and error.
Yes, ma'am.
And many times people look at other people, right? You look at other people who are successful, and it's like you want to be successful in certain arenas, but some people don't really get the trial and error part of it. People
Right.
think that everything's just supposed to work the first time you try it, or the first biggest idea that comes to your head. You think that, okay, I'm about to make thousands and millions of dollars, and no, it's trial and error and figuring it out. I'm
Mhm.
glad you said that. And so tell us a little bit about your professional career.
I am a counselor by profession. I started off teaching second grade and then went into elementary school counseling. And from there, I realized, oh, wow, a lot of these younger students, I've seen some of those mannerisms portrayed in adults, right?
Mm,
So the idea of the tantrum, maybe it manifests differently, but I've seen a guy act similarly at the bank when he didn't get the withdrawal that he thought he should have gotten, or a person cut up at the movie when they sold the last ticket and you thought that you deserved to be ahead in line, or all these other different scenarios. And so working on the elementary campus, I realized, wow, this type of psychosis or these behaviors, number one, they are learned, and number two, they are encouraged. So what
mhm,
can I do with my skill set to help encourage a different behavior? Because I think what society has taught us to do is seek rewards and punishments. So the way we thwart behavior is by punishing what we don't like, as opposed to replacing what we don't like. So
mm,
I think that was one of the things that I learned just from an elementary standpoint, and then moved now where I work more with our teens and adults that struggle with addiction. That's the biggest thing. So
mhm,
I've learned that addiction has so many definitions. While we do focus on substance use and abuse, people are addicted to technology, people are addicted to attention, people
mm,
are addicted to depressive moods, people, because of the way it allows us to interact and engage in a controlled environment. And
mm,
sometimes we're not realizing that those vices can be social emotional, they can be environmental, they're not always chemical. So
mhm,
now we're unraveling addiction in so many ways. Is it really the drug, or is it the lost loved one? Is it really the alcohol, or is it the insecurity to where now you need this set of friends and these group of friends in order to cope with the idea that who you are naturally isn't good enough for the group that you want to be a part of? So it all comes down to social emotional counseling as it relates. And in this capacity where I serve now, I find myself talking to parents, even more so with students, because the parents are at their wits' end on how to address their kid. But then when I've spoken to the kid reveals some of those discrepancies and inadequacies that exist between the parent child relationship. So
mhm,
some of the onset of the anxiety, while it may look like it's troubling grades or horrible friends, it's really, I just need attention from dad. I just want mom to call me. I just need an adult that's responsible for taking care of me to also invest in my interests and tell me that they're proud of me. And sometimes that is the reason why teenagers choose a different path, because
mhm,
it's an outcry for, hey, come look at me.
mhm,
And then when they find somebody that they can connect with without judgment, that's the
mhm.
key. They do find some rehabilitation from there. So I love what I do. I get to really just get into the hearts and the minds of people and do what I can.
Mhm. I love
Yeah.
it. I mean, you are really talking my language. Yeah, you're talking my language.
Oh,
I
I
love it. I
know.
love it so much. And I really hope navigators, you are listening to this, and maybe even as parents of teenagers, and you're wondering, okay, why is my child doing this, or why is my child acting out? Maybe it's time to reevaluate that relationship and what communication looks like,
Yeah,
and what are you saying versus what the child is interpreting, or what is the child saying versus what you're interpreting from the child. That's a big
absolutely.
that's a big part of it. um,
Absolutely. Very true.
so COVID-19 presented so many different challenges to businesses, and some did not survive the pandemic. You work as a mental health professional. Tell us a little how you pivoted during this pandemic as a mental health professional.
It was crazy having to all of a sudden do online counseling,
Mm,
right? And, at the beginning of my career path, Zoom, we didn't even know what that was. Like the only time that people would be talking virtually this way was FaceTime, right? Or if you had a long time ago Glide or Google Duo, right? So the idea of counseling in this dynamic was already foreign to everyone. And then it also, there's a gap between being able to connect with them because it's easy to go to a classroom, pull a kid out of class, take them to your office and have a conversation. But now we've got to find them
Mm,
because they're at home and we only have the parent's number. The parent might be at work and then try to get in contact with the kid who's still asleep because he's in virtual school. And then specifically with the caseload that I deal with, the kid is probably not even at home. He's doing something on his own, right?
mhm,
So it was a challenge at first, and we just had to figure it out as, mental health professionals, and again, just connect with those children and make them want to come. And if there's anything that I've learned in this time, is that a lot of people, they found therapy daunting because the misconception is that when you get into the therapist's office, you're going to have to break down, tell your deepest, darkest secrets, talk about all the things that you hate, and you're going to be crying and you're going to feel worse at the end of it. But when you bring on a lightheartedness where we're really just having a conversation and you get to express your genuine self.
mhm.
I tell people all the time, I used to hear as a kid, I was class clown, so proud of that, right? And I used to hear as a kid, you should totally go into comedy. And I was like, but my version of comedy is very situational. It's very spare of the moment. I
Mhm,
cannot write a script and stand on the stage and give you a 30-minute set, but I can high side right here in the moment.
mhm,
And I always wondered, what am I actually here to do? Should I be doing like radio stuff? Should I pursue comedy? Because I'm naturally kind of funny.
mhm,
And what I realized over time is what that humor is really supposed to do is break down people's barriers and guards to
mhm,
where now they can connect with you as a human and
mhm,
they mistakenly start talking to you about what they need and who they really are because you've already loosened up all of those misconceptions, and media portrayals of what a therapist does. Sits there with glasses with the legs crossed and writes down all the horrible things you just said about the world, right?
right.
It doesn't have to be what it is. So
Mhm,
as I started to connect with kids, word of mouth got out.
mhm,
Different publications ended up coming out, like Clubhouse became a thing.
mhm,
And now kids who are afraid to show their faces on screen, and even parents and adults, and then people who are unrelated to what I'm doing professionally at all, they just hear a conversation about mental health on Clubhouse. And now
mhm,
with their headphones, they feel a little bit more courageous to talk and speak their truth because no one can see them. No one can judge them. No one's looking at how many tattoos you have or what color you dyed your hair. You're
mhm.
just using your voice to articulate a point. And then that became a bigger platform as well. So I'm very appreciative for, apps like Clubhouse that allow people just to get their words out and not
Okay.
having to, let me put on 10 pounds of makeup so you can see me look my best.
Mhm. Got it. So, from what I'm hearing, your gift is to use humor to get people
Yeah.
to talk. To break
Absolutely. Yeah, we
everybody
can
down. Got you.
absolutely. You gotta make people want it, you know?
Mhm,
And if there's anything that I've just realized, even for my own life, certain things I did not get until I wanted it, even though it
mhm,
was presented to me early on.
mhm,
And so if you give things people need, kind of like we do with our kids, you give them medicine inside the applesauce, you know?
mhm.
So if you give people what they need wrapped inside of something they want, it'll be easier to digest.
Ah, that's good. Give people something they need wrapped inside of something they want. That's pretty good. So my next thing is we talking about the pandemic. How have you seen people's mental health impacted as a result of the pandemic?
If there's anything that I can say as a result of this pandemic is
Uh-oh.
how connectedness is the core of our human existence, even
Okay.
for the introvert, right? So, as an introvert, self proclaimed introvert, I didn't necessarily suffer as much as I thought a lot of people probably did because I don't have that need for external motivation. I don't need to be here and there and be seen here and doing this in order for me to feel fulfilled. I can literally have hobbies and
Mhm.
be okay dealing with stuff in my backyard, right?
Mhm.
But then there are people who they do need that energy from others in order to build their world. But even I noticed with some introverts, there were some people who it affected them very deeply because even though they didn't need that external environment, they needed that connectedness from someone. And it
Mhm.
was just the idea that my support system, I don't have control over that anymore. I
Mhm.
needed to fly home to see my grandparents and I can't do it. I needed to, sometimes people, even though they're introverted, it's going to work. It's the process of going to work. It's the habit of I listen to a certain podcast on the way. I drop my kids off and I say, y'all have a great day. And then I go to work. I close my door, put my lamp on, get my mood taken care of. And then I shot off a bunch of emails. And now that all of that has been ripped away from me, I'm questioning number one, my importance and relevance. And number two, my ability to be productive.
Mm.
Okay. Because some people really do depend on being able to be in a space in order to create and to produce and all of that kind of stuff. And now that that world has been ripped away from them, even though I didn't necessarily need a phone call to make me feel better, I did need access to my voicemail so I can see every morning how many people left messages and that makes me feel away, you know?
Mm.
So it was definitely impactful. It was
Mhm.
definitely impactful. I think it created as a society, or at least the society that I'm most connected to, it made us understand the importance of being an individual and reaching individuals.
Mm.
Sometimes in education and in ministry, we try to kill several birds with one stone. And I really hate that saying because I don't want to kill any birds. But
Mhm.
we try to accomplish, you know, the whole. We try to reach the masses.
Mhm.
And I think what this caused us to do is to focus on the individual, which I
Mm.
really believe is the point of it all.
Mhm.
If we take this all the way back to Genesis, he made one man, one woman.
Yes.
Okay. He didn't make an entire world at the end of the sixth day. He made one
Mhm.
man and then he made one woman.
Right.
So if you can focus on an individual to where you can connect, then that individual will also reach an individual, and that individual will also reach an individual. And then we have connected as the masses. That's where your
Mhm.
6 degrees of separation come from. But we've got to focus on reaching a person at a time. So when that person crosses your mind, that's the time to text them. That's the time to send them a voice memo. That's the time to send them a little video and say, hey, girl, what you doing? You know,
Mhm.
and then that makes that person feel, even though we're distant, I was thought of and I
Mhm.
wasn't used as being a means to an end. I was an intention.
Yeah.
And that does so much for people, especially in this space where we're quarantined and we're having to be distant.
Mhm.
It's the intentionality that makes people feel valued.
That was,
Yeah.
wow, that was good. You said so much in that little bit, but definitely focusing on the individual. I love it. I love it. And you know how people really had to just learn um really how to pivot, how to readjust, how to adjust in something none of us experienced. There was
No
no
one has ever done this.
no one 100 years ago, maybe, but I don't think
Yeah.
that there many of them are probably not here. So
Correct.
I mean, just thinking about it, and it's like there was no formula, there was no cookie cutter recipe. You just had to, like you say,
Right.
figure it out. You know, in those moments,
Mm-hmm.
you really had to figure
Mm-hmm.
it out and just kind of dig deep and
Yeah. Yeah.
figure it out.
And I learned a lot about temperament because of that, you know. So, of course, I'm only on this Zoom with this one student at a time, or with this one parent at a time, or with this one just person at a time, right?
Hmm.
And you start learning from there who's a morning person and who's not. You learn from there, you know, what kind of topics to address first or last. How do you end a session? How do you begin a session? You know, all of those kind of things you ended up learning. Whereas in the school environment, you really don't focus on it to that degree because you're talking to an entire classroom or an entire audience or auditorium, right?
Hmm.
So now, again, you're addressing the whole. We're all going to talk about the character of persistence and resilience, but I'm speaking to all of eighth grade, as opposed to noticing that this eighth grader, he's not responsive. It's not that he's disrespectful, he's unresponsive because you really got to get him at 11. It's not going to work for him at 8, you know?
Hmm. Mhm.
So again, addressing those individuals, it just helps you see people as people and not people as entities.
Uh-huh.
And I think just even on interpersonal levels, you had to realize that, it's like, okay, I can't get to the family reunion. It's been canceled. So how do I now connect with my aunts and my cousins who live in Maryland and I haven't seen them in a while? How do I connect with them just so I can, stay in touch, because we don't know how long this situation is going to last.
Mhm.
And while at first we were put under quarantine orders for 2 weeks, we ended up finding out, yo, this is a year, you know? So again, it creates that intentionality of, I know that what we had scheduled got canceled, but our relationship didn't. And these
Mhm.
are the things that I'm going to do to make sure and enforce that we continue. So lots of pivoting, lots of figuring it out. And man, when I say lots of trial and error, because when you call somebody, want to talk about something deep and they not ready, rejection city. So you got to be ready for that too.
Right. Right. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I know the pandemic is something we have all been focusing on this past year, and we're kind of looking like we're almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe if we could sit
Mhm,
still long
mhm.
enough, but you know,
I know.
America gonna be America, land of the free
I
and
know.
home of the brave, and yeah,
Real brave.
real brave, exactly.
Real
So
brave.
so we're focusing on the pandemic and the pivots during the pandemic, but are there any other areas in your life where you can say that you've had successful pivots?
Let me tell you. Let me tell you.
Okay.
Okay. So by the time pandemic happened, I felt like I was pivot perfect because again, I have had a life to where I've been forced to do this.
Mhm.
And I'm very aware that people have gone through what I've gone through and they didn't make it. Right.
Mhm.
So I'm very grateful. That's the first thing. But number two, I, again, had this flawless childhood. Life was a good time. And when you have a checklist of ordinances, these are the things that I've done for myself. These are the things that I've done in ministry. This is the person and the reputation that I have established. Surely I'm Cinderella. And Prince
Mhm.
Charming is going to put me in a palace. And I soon found out that I was Joseph. You're going to the pit. Okay. So I was like, wait a minute. Like, I had to deal with number one, this has happened. I'm now going through a divorce and a chapter 7 bankruptcy. Okay. So, how do I land on my feet when I've really never had an opportunity to just be an adult, a self sufficient adult? And now I'm thrust into adulthood while having to care for 3 children as a single mother.
Mm.
And these 3 kids are young, they are 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So, that became a thing. And I had absolutely no idea how to do it, but
Mhm.
it had to get done.
Mhm.
It had to get done. And I often look at life when it falls apart. I often think of a puzzle. Let's say you have 1,000 pieces. And with those 1,000 pieces just all sitting in the box, and now they're all just scrambled across the table, you're very aware that these pieces go together and create a picture, but you
Mhm.
don't know what order to start because they all just look like fragments. But instead of throwing the whole puzzle away, what you do is you start with the obvious things. Let's start with the corners
Mhm.
and let's see what happens with these corners and then find the straight edges because you know that's your borders.
Right.
So for everybody who is going through life's crisis, that's what I would say. Where's your boundary? Start with your borders. Secure your boundaries. So we are very aware as we build this puzzle that food, water, shelter, and connectedness to a safe support system is necessary. So let's talk about where you work. Let's talk about how much you make. Let's talk about where you live. Do you need to reduce those finances? Do you need a different cell phone plan? We might not be able to have iPhone 12 right now. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So we secure our borders. And then from there, you start working your way in. Okay,
Mhm.
so now that I've secured this job, how can I get to a promotion? How can I use the connections that I have to seek employment elsewhere, or work more hours, or be seen by the people that I need to be seen
Mhm.
by? Who are the people in my circle that I can trust and compartmentalize? Maybe this is the person that I go to for laughter. This is the person that I go to for counsel. This is the person that I go to for spiritual guidance and to vent. But not everybody serves the same person. So now we're building in. And
Mhm.
as you zero in on your life, those little successes feel like success, period. and it gives you a better picture of everything. So instead of looking at, oh, I got a divorce, or I lost my job, or my health is declining, this, that, and the other, as my life is falling apart, it's about rephrasing and reframing. Okay, I've got fragments, but this goes somewhere. So, where in my story does this divorce belong? Where in my story does this failed friendship belong? Where in this story does this church transition belong? Where in this story does this career change belong? It belongs somewhere else I wouldn't have it. I am a puzzle that needs to be figured out, but start at your borders. I tell people all the time, instead of going from negative thinking to positive thinking, go from negative thinking to practical thinking. And from practical, we can reach positivity. Your body doesn't know whether or not you won $1 million or if you have just colored a picture in a coloring book, because the chemicals that are released are the same. So if you start with small successes, your body responds to that, and all your endorphins are released. All of the chemicals, you feel just as excited over a bowl of ice cream as you do over a job promotion. So start doing things that you know you can finish. Start with small tasks and finish. And that's what I had to do. I had to figure out where I was going to live first. I know that I just lost the love of my life. I know that I've got to change some things spiritually. I know that I've got to figure out how to maintain my kids. So, yeah, let's figure out, first of all, with this paycheck, where can I live? With this paycheck, what daycare am I going to take my kids to now? And then eventually that paycheck grew. And eventually I was less afraid of
Mhm.
being by myself because I realized I wasn't alone.
Mhm.
I pulled on my friends more. I pulled on my parents more. I invested in spiritual things. When I tell you, anytime a church door was open, I was there. This was before like YouTube was really a big deal. But even with YouTube, I was on there looking at nonsense, people on skateboards falling and making me laugh. So however, just to lighten your mood and lighten your day,
Mhm.
that's what you got to do. So I had to do that. I was forced to do that, and it's literally a matter of reframing and rephrasing. I love talking about the blog.
Mhm.
The blog was really because I remarried, and that marriage lasted less than a year. And of course, it was humiliating, embarrassing. Didn't want to go through that. It's like, why do these things keep happening? I was left
Mhm.
on my honeymoon by myself. So here I am on my honeymoon alone because my husband didn't show up. But
Wow.
instead of the first thing is I was very surprised by how good of a time I was having by myself, because it was the first time I'd ever just been on a vacation by
Mhm.
myself. I've always been on vacation connected to family reunion or things of that sort.
Mhm.
So that's what introduced me into solo traveling.
Mhm.
So, do I really want to sit up and be mad at the person who abandoned me? Or am I grateful for the opportunity to learn something else about myself? So, we're going to make this pivot. And now that I know that I can be in Vegas alone, where else can I be alone? How about New York City? How about Chicago? How about San Francisco? How about Paris? How about London? How about France? How about Rome? You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, all of those, every round goes higher, as they say.
Mhm.
But it's just a matter of first securing your borders and securing your boundaries and growing from there. Intentional
Wow.
growth.
Yes, yes. I love that with the figuring out a puzzle because that's what I normally do. I'll get the corners and then figure out the borders. But it's interesting how you can apply that to life,
Yeah.
figure out your corners and your borders first and then build from there. And the pieces will go together. They will form a picture.
They will form a picture.
They will form a picture. But when they're in the middle of the floor, it doesn't look like it, right?
It look like
When you're in the
anything.
middle of a crisis, it doesn't look like you're about to form a picture.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
And
you
the
said,
best part about it is that the puzzle put together is bigger than the picture on the box.
true.
So when the things in your life finally come together, it's better than what you imagine. It's
Hmm.
actually bigger than the picture on your box. I tell people all the time, my life is not the life I planned, but it's way better.
Hmm.
It's way better. I couldn't have planned this if I tried.
You said something, and I'm sure the navigators that are listening to this, we want to ask this question. You said you were left on your honeymoon
Mhm.
alone.
Alone. Yeah. Yeah. I got married and he didn't show up to the honeymoon. Of course, talking about I didn't know. And I'm like, no, but we've actually planned this trip. And now you pulled out of it. So here I am on a plane. After the day before, we just witnessed and celebrated our friends getting engaged. Okay. So it's not like you were missing and I didn't know where you were. We
Mm-hmm.
were literally together,
Mm-hmm.
but you decided you're not going. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Well, I'm still going to go because I paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
what I'm not going to do is waste this trip and not go. And yeah, so I went and I was surprised at how good of a time I was having. So what I did find out, this might be a little travel tip for some people. Hopefully it still stands when you go to Vegas and they see that you are a solo traveler. Sometimes they upgrade you
Mm-hmm.
to like these suites
Mm-hmm.
because they need those spots filled and they would rather fill up the smaller rooms, I guess, with other people or whatever. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up having a whole suite on a higher floor with a better view. And I was like, seriously? I had a good time. I
Uh-huh.
had a good time. And all I do in Vegas is walk around and look at magic shows. So,
Right.
it was a lot of fun. And from
Mm-hmm.
there, I just realized, yo, why am I having a good time? Like I was really surprised at how good of a time I was having. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was supposed to be depressed. And sometimes I think in life, we don't allow ourselves to be happy because
Mm.
what's around us is sad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, no, it's okay. It's okay to laugh even though you just got through crying. It's okay to
Right.
smile even though you just got through arguing or frowning or whatever. It's okay. All of those emotions flow in and out of us. So experience them as they come and process them as they come. But I have a good time.
That's pretty amazing. So, based on what you've shared, with you being a military child, and navigating through what, two divorces, I guess
Hmm.
it's safe to say or safe to assume that you embrace change, and
Oh
that
yeah,
it's safe to say that you embrace change. But for the people who have challenges with change, people who have
yeah,
challenges with uh, navigating through a crisis, what are some practices or mindsets or principles you applied to
yeah,
help you successfully pivot in those areas or in challenging times?
yeah. What I can say is, while I am very aware, and this had to be a growth mindset for me, um, I embrace change now. I am definitely one who is used to foreknowledge. I prepare and over prepare.
Hmm.
And I've always been like a paranoid personality to where it's like, no, I need to know today what the next 10 years are going to look like. And when things don't go my way, like even in college, I ended up having to change my major. Okay, I don't have a plan B. I spent my entire life wanting to be pre med. So what do I do now? I think what ended up happening, I kind of have a, well, something has to happen mindset. And I think that's where people can start. You can start with, okay, change is difficult, but change is constant. And at some point, I can gain control. So while I cannot always avoid change, I can regain control. I can control, number one, how I respond instead of not just reacting. I
Hmm.
can change how I can control how I respond. And I can also kind of guide this ship where I need it to. So even though crisis may have happened, I'm very aware that something can be done to minimize it. So if a house burns down, okay, the first people I need to call, where do I sleep tonight? Who are those friends that can, let me lay on their couch, but also let's get in contact with the insurance company. You know what I mean? It's like I'm without all of my things right now, but that practical level of thinking, understanding something actually can be done.
Hmm.
Something actually can be done. So it's that element of hope. You see what I'm saying? The
Uh-huh.
hope that this sucks, but it will get better. It can get better.
Hmm.
And if I put forth the effort and trust the right people, it will get better sooner than later.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Um, is there something that you are working on now that we should be looking out for in the near future?
Well, go to my blog, blue2new.org, www.blue2new.org. You'll see any kind of updates and things that I'm doing there. But the biggest thing is Therapy Thursdays on Clubhouse. And we
Oh,
address a number of topics all the time. And it's me with three other moderators who really just share our mental health care tips about specific topics. We've addressed accountability, we've addressed imposter syndrome, we've addressed how to deal with crisis, how to be okay when you're not okay,
Mhm.
a number of different topics. So that's 7 p.m. Central Standard Time and on Thursdays. And it's been incredible. People come up on the stage, ask their questions, we give them our advice and all of that kind of stuff. So from there, I've been able to have sidebar conversations with some other people and just really help them work through some things. So that's
Mhm.
also been a joy of being able to connect with individuals on a level because of a bigger platform. So yes, look for me on Clubhouse. It's Dr.TLaShonn on Clubhouse as well.
Dr.TLaShonn. That's TLASHONN on Clubhouse. And that's for people who have iPhones or iPads. People who have Androids, we cannot find you because we don't have access to Clubhouse.
I know.
But
So the
that's
people on
okay.
Android just have to look at what I'm doing on Instagram, I guess.
Right, right. But I have an iPad, so I can check it out.
There
So
you go.
as we get ready to wrap up, what message would you like to leave with people who are scared to pivot into something different?
I love that. My message would be very simple: do it afraid.
Mhm.
Do it afraid. Do it afraid. Do your research. Talk to people who are already where you're going and get some insight, get some counsel, iron out your next steps, but do it afraid. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times we are trying to figure out the entire thing and
Mhm.
it keeps us from doing anything. But if you
Mm,
can just figure out the next thing, do it afraid.
I love it. Yeah, I can see that how people can get stuck trying to figure out the big thing instead
Hmm.
of the next thing. The next
Yeah,
thing may just be a small step, right?
absolutely.
To
Absolutely.
get to the big thing. But
Absolutely.
people get so overwhelmed with that big thing until they don't even move. So that's
Mhm.
good. Do it afraid.
Do it
And
afraid.
finally, what are some tips you can share with us to help keep our mental health intact during challenging and unpredictable times? Did you get that? Oh, snap.